It's my distinct honor to have the opportunity to introduce our president of the college, Dr. Meredith. And many of you attended the convocation or listened to the convocation yesterday and were able to hear all the insights that he was able to provide. But I'll provide a brief introduction to Dr. Meredith, not to take too much of his time and the insights that he's going to provide. So Dr. Meredith is a professor and chairman in the Department of Surgery at Wake Forest School of Medicine in Winston-Salem and the chair of surgery at Wake Forest School of Medicine. He's served in numerous positions within the college, including serving as the medical director of the ACS trauma programs from 2006 to 2010, the chair of the Committee on Trauma from 2002 to 2006. He's an ACS governor at large and serves on the board of Governors Surgical Training Work Group, and he has served on the Health Policy Advisory Council. Additionally, Dr. Meredith has served in leadership capacities in numerous other professional surgical organizations, including the Southeastern Surgical, the Eastern Association of Surgery and Trauma, the Halstead Society, the AAST, and the Southern Surgical. And now we have the opportunity for Dr. Meredith's leadership within the college. Dr. Meredith, thank you very much for taking your time to join the annual meeting of the Young Fellows Association.
Well, I'm very glad to be able to do this, and glad to hope to see you. See if I can share my screen with you. Is that coming through?
Yes.
You never know, right? Amelia can tell us about that. It's just, you just keep working on it. I've had trouble with this. Once I share my screen, I can't ever find the place to make it go away. So somebody will just have to turn me off if it just bring a big hook in. If I get a chance to talk to young surgeons, it takes me a long time to ever be willing to quit. But first, I want to start by welcoming all of you to the Clinical Congress. And for those of you who are initiates, welcome to the American College of Surgeons. It is a very rich opportunity with multiple places where you can go. Clearly, we believe you are the future of surgery. You know, I was an initiate 20, 30, 40 years ago, and Frank Spencer gave the convocation, and I still remember it. I also still remember walking out just so excited and inspired, and turning to my wife and said, "What did you think?" And she said, "I thought that would never end. How many honorary fellows are they going to introduce?" So it's always a matter of perspective. And at any rate, welcome. There are many ways to get involved in the college. The Young Fellows is one, but it's not the only one. Any practicing surgeon as a fellow can get involved, and there will be lots of things that you can do. I give, let's see if I can roll this forward. I give all young people some bits of advice. When you're really young, and someone comes along and says, "You know, we need someone to help write this expose of the history of surgery and French art," and you go, "Okay, well, I'm willing to try. I'll do that because they'll never ask me again," right? And it's not true. The people who are good, the people who are willing to work, the people who do the right things, you'll get asked again. And early on, you don't have to say yes to everything. It is way better to say, "I'm very interested in serving the American Association for Surgery and Trauma, but I really don't think I can do that justice, or I don't think I can get that done in time, or that's not something I know about. I can help you find somebody else." You will get asked again. You can't get a reputation for always saying no, right? But it's much easier to overcome a reputation of saying no a few times than it is to overcome a reputation of always being late, turning in crappy work, not being interested in what the group is working on. So you don't have to say yes to everything. Say yes to what you have a passion for, things that you're going to do, and then do what you say. Deliver on time. I used to instruct the Committee on Trauma to I want it on time and in color. And if you'll do that, it's very easy to, especially in the beginning, you're getting ready to turn something into the College of Surgeons, and you're worried it's not going to be perfect, and it's not going to be perfect. You get it good as you can get it on time. I remember the first chapter I ever turned in for the what was then the Green Book, the optimal resources for the care of the injured patient. Man, they chewed it to pieces. They gave it what I call an ATLS ass whipping, but they appreciated the work that I'd done, and they appreciated the passion that I brought to the table, and they helped me make it better, and it got it good. So on time and in color. Go slowly in your new practice. You don't have to do a Whipple on your first day. You don't have to do the esophagectomy on your first day. My dad told me when I was just starting out, if you're as good as I think you are, they will figure it out soon enough. And if you're not, you want it to take as long as possible. Don't stay within your boundaries. Do the things that you can do and get there. You need to have a reputation by your referral base that you're a good surgeon. You send back well patients. You call them up and tell them what happened. They need to be pleased that they sent you a patient. And in that regard, one of my pet peeves is everybody talks about sending patients. The patient came to me from the outside hospital. That's a pejorative. Your hospital is outside too. They're all outside. Respect your referring physicians. And I don't mean that just treat them with respect. Respect them. Your referring physicians are out there working just as hard for their patients as you are for your patients. And I'll tell you, when I'm in the dressing room and I hear someone saying, you know, I got this patient from an outside hospital, or I got this patient from this bozo in, you know, Sparta, North Carolina, and he totally messed it up. I think to myself, I don't want to send that guy a patient. He might be talking about me like that if I send him a patient. Right? You need to truly respect your referring physicians. Don't just treat them with respect. Now I'm going to take a couple of seconds because many young surgeons don't understand the model that is actually underlying a surgery practice, and it's inescapable. And having been a chair of surgery for 20 some years, and especially having been a chair of surgery in a time when we lived on our practice income, right? We paid our nurses, we paid our people. You may not be doing this, but somebody is doing this. It is how surgery practices work. So if you were a candy factory, every piece of candy you sell brings in a certain amount of dollars. And you operate your candy factory with a set of fixed costs. And then for a candy factory, every piece of candy you make, you got to buy sugar, you got to buy more heating oil to boil the sugar down. For surgeons, we don't have many variable costs, right? We most of our variable costs are borne by the hospital that we work in or the ASC that we work in, and so we have very little variable costs. So we have variable revenue and fixed costs and very little variable costs. And what you make as a surgeon, what you make for your practice, what you make for your hospital, what you make for yourself if you're running an independent practice, is this difference between the total costs and your variable revenue, right? Most of our costs are fixed. Most surgery practices have about half of their collections are spent on fixed costs. Professional liability, staff wages, inflation, staff fringe, regulatory compliance, lease costs for your building, interest rates for your loans. They just stay that way. And over time, those variable costs have been going up, and they will continue to go up, and they go up faster than the rate we get paid. Right? We don't have much in the way of increases. I'll show you that on the next slide. So as our fixed costs go up, our variable costs go up from that, right? These red lines are just the same as the white line, just moved up. And that cuts into what is the profit of a surgery practice. Same thing with variable revenue. It gets shifted down if our payer goes down. Medicaid is getting ready to try to pay us 10% less for E&M visits and 10% less over the conversion factor. I don't know if you know what the conversion factor is, but everything you do as an RVU is associated with, they're going to pay 10% less on that if this bill that's in Congress now, if there are not bills in Congress now to stop it, that's going to hurt us all. And that drops down what we get paid. So here's the bottom line. If you cut back on your practice or you lose volume, you move from here to here on this curve, and it costs you that much revenue. This is really brutal. And there are things that hospitals do to offset this for us if you work in a practice or you work in a medical school, but they can't offset it all, and not understanding how it works. And if you're in practice, as our department was for the first 15 years that I was here, This is just a brutal fact that, let's say you're out practicing and you're collecting $500,000 a year. Most of you will collect way more than that. And your expenses are half. It might be 47%, it might be 53%, but it's going to be somewhere around 50%. So your fixed costs are 250K, you take home 250K. Let's say you decide to work 10% less. It's easy to do, and that might happen when you're late in practice and you want to slow down. That might happen because you bring in a new partner and they take 10% of the work. That might happen because you want to job share. That might want to happen because you want to increase your home responsibilities. That might happen because federal law requires us to reduce our work hours. Any of those things could happen to us. Your collections go down 10%, right? $50,000 off of 500,000 collections. Your work goes down by 50%. You now collected 450K. Your expenses don't go down. Your expenses just don't go down. They don't say, okay, your malpractice goes down by 10% because you're doing 10% less surgery. Your nurses don't say, I'll work for 10% less. The rent on your building doesn't go down by 10%. The computer's software in your computer doesn't go down by 10%, stays there. So you collect 450, you pay 250 in expenses, you collect 200K, you're getting paid 20% less. Right now, if you're working in a practice or you're working for a health system or you're working for a medical school, they can offset some of that, but somewhere in the background, they're having to offset that. And so when you're looking at practices that say, our expenses are, our take-home pay is 55, 60% of our collections, you're getting ready to join a practice that is way out here on the volume curve. It's really busy because they're not able to drop their fixed costs that much less. The rent on their building isn't less than the rent on everybody else's building. Their malpractice costs aren't less than everybody else's building. It's just a fundamental part of practice, and understanding it when you're young is valuable. It could give you some insight into how the economics of your practice are working. I didn't say that to bum you out. I didn't say that because it's the greatest practicing surgery is the greatest job on earth, and you're going to get paid fine, and you're going to have that, but when you're negotiating contracts, when you're figuring out how much work you're going to do, when you're doing all those things, you need to understand that in the background. You're way less valuable down here on the curve than you are up here on the curve because we're not getting paid expense free, right? More advice, just advice to young surgeons. Please avoid insatiable desires. Many people are very ambitious, and ambition is good. Especially women are often colored terribly by being ambitious. It's not right. Ambition is a good thing to have. You should have that. But having insatiable desires is a pathway to misery, because if you go look it up, you can't satisfy them. You are not going to satisfy insatiable desires. And I know people whose entire careers have been based on getting into this association, making this amount of money, having a practice that's this big, and it's insatiable. It's always more. And if you can't stop and enjoy the successes you have along the way, and you don't define your successes as making a contribution, as doing something good, if you don't define your successes by these satiable desires, you will find that you're now 25 years into a career and you're still not satisfied with anything you've done. So make sure your list of goals has a lot of satiable desires too, not just insatiable desires. I know people that have been president of the American College of Surgeons and they're not satisfied with what they've done with their life. And that's a real shame. That's a real shame. Learn to do surgery, not operations. The operations changed. When I was training, we did 2 gastrectomies every day for ulcer disease, right? It's changed a lot. Everything about it changes. But as long as you know how to do surgery, people will need you to treat surgical conditions. And you'll have the greatest career there is, and it'll be available to you. But if you just learn to do operations, and that's what you're thinking your life is, and that's your job is just doing operations, you don't think of yourself as someone who treats patients with surgical conditions, you're gonna get shifted out of this business that we're in and find yourself having to make a new way by going to learn something. So remember, you learned to do surgery. You didn't just learn to do operations. Young people, ambitious people early in their career, You can try lots of things. You can try things that you can fail at. It is okay to fail. It is not okay to get so married to some concept, whether it's a research idea or some new operation or some anything, and not recognize that it's going to be a failure. You can try lots of things. You can try being in this society. You can try writing these kinds of papers. You can try working on these committees. You can do all of these things in the college. But when you recognize, but if the more you can try more and more, if you are willing to recognize this is not going to be a success and drop it from your plate early, right? Then you get to try lots of things. Stay with the things that are working. Stay with the things that are going to work. And that is really, really, really true for those of you that are going to go down an academic pathway where you're going to try to be writing about this or getting grant funding in that. Try lots of things. Early on, try tons of things. Midway in your career, or maybe 6, 7 years into your career, you need to be learning how to focus on a few things. You need to be known for something that is some contribution that you're making. But you can try lots of things if you're willing to fail early. By that I mean recognize this is not going to work and stop committing to it. Those people who commit to something like or early on, Mike Chang, who is my trauma partner, we got really interested in Swan-Ganz catheters that measured right heart ejection fraction. And we thought that was going to be the way trauma resuscitation was done, right? But if we had invested in that and continued to invest in that, and we're still trying to write in that, we would be nowhere now, right? We had to recognize that was not going to take us all the way to the end. It was a great tool for understanding right heart physiology, but it was never going to be the end all be all. Everyone becomes more like the people they hang out with. So hang out with people you want to be like. My mother taught me that years and years and years ago. Choose a practice with people you want to be like, who practice with values that you admire, who take care of the patients the way you want to take care of them, who treat other people the way you think other people ought to be treated. It's way more important than any other financial or structural considerations in a practice or in a career. It's true, but not as mandatory in choosing a fellowship and a residency, but it's still true in both fellowship and residency. But man, you will become like the people you practice with. You want to be practicing the people you want to be like. The world is changed by your example, not your opinion. I'll also say to this, a great Maya Angelou quote: people will forget what you say to them, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And you need to conduct yourself throughout your career keeping those two thoughts in mind. They're really, really important. Your world is changed by your example, not your opinion. And people will forget what you say, but they will never forget how you make them feel. And then I'll end with the same 3 things that I said last night in my convocation, because I tell every group of people that will let me listen to this: if you can live your life with a presumption of virtuous intent, you will be resilient, and it will allow you to be happy. Those people who feel like everywhere they turn, someone is against them. They're trying to cancel my case. They're trying to keep me from having enough block time. They're constantly making me fill out this bureaucracy. Here's another mandate from the federal government. If you spend your life with that, you will be thwarted at every turn, and the people around you will see you as an obstacle. Very, very importantly, though, if you approach people with a presumption of virtuous intent, and that anesthesiologist comes up and says, we can't start your case yet. We've got pregnancy test isn't back, If instead of starting immediately trying to convince them why they're wrong, that you can't start your case, which is my instinct, everybody's instinct, you instead try to seek to be understood, to understand before you seek to be understood. If you presume that person has some virtuous intent in mind, that they're trying to help you or the patient or even themselves, you stop to figure out what that is before you then go to convince them that they're wrong, this patient needs to go ahead, right? For my favorite is they come to me and say, the C-spine's not cleared. We can't go to the operating room yet. This guy's ruptured spleen or torn aorta, can't go. I'm thinking, the spine's unstable. Now let's go. Right, right. But if you stop for a minute and presume virtuous intent and figure out what it is their agenda is, you can help them achieve their agenda while you achieve your agenda, and you will have made an ally instead of an enemy, and you will not feel frustrated in your life. It's really a very powerful tool. Catch people around you doing something right 6 times as often as you catch them doing something wrong. People will not fly well People will not even do it right all the time for fear that you're going to catch them. They will only do it right when they think you can catch them. But people will do it right every single time if they think you might catch them doing something right, because they want to look good in your eyes. You're a surgeon, you're a leader, you're an important part of your hospital, you're an important part of your practice. People will flock to you. They will flock to do the things the way you think they ought to be done if every time they do something right. And that means, great job. You really, I know this guy was a tough intubation, and you got that done really well. That is fantastic. Or some intern brings you a lab value that you'd already looked up. It's good that you brought that to my attention, because checking for these details is really important. People will flock to you. And don't forget why you went into this in the first place. You are young. You know now why you did that. I see so many people who over the years get worn down by the process, by the mundaneness, by the mendacity of the industry of medicine today, that they lose sight of why they went into this in the first place, and they fail to harvest the joy that exists from taking care of sick patients and giving them a chance for a better life. And if you lose sight of that along your way, it will strip the joy from what you're doing, and you will turn the best profession you can possibly be in to a job. And that would be a real shame. Don't let that happen to you. Write it down now and go back and review it. Anyway, I'm sorry if I went over a little bit, Josh. I just put together a couple of slides about this. I hope it's been worth your time, and I really appreciate that you've gone to the trouble of joining the YFA. You have a direct connection to the Board of Regents, and you have access through this to learn all of the things that are going on in the college, whether it's advocacy or quality or education. There's so much happening that you can get engaged in, and we need young people with new ideas and diversity of opinion. And if you will make yourself available, people will realize that you're someone who's willing to work and wants to get involved, and you'll have a chance. And if you have an idea that you want to put on a panel at the clinical congress, and they say, sorry, we don't have any more space for that. Don't take that as a turn down. Fail, but fail early. Go back and send in another one, or ask somebody the question, why not? All right, I can't tell you how many panels I've suggested to the clinical congress. They've turned me down, right? Because we did it last year, or vascular's doing it this year. They don't need another vascular trauma panel now, or there's just 100 reasons of all that stuff is. But if you presume virtuous intent when that happens and you come back again later, you'll make your way through that door, and you will find it's the greatest organization in the world. Anyway, thank you so much for giving me your attention for this little bit of time.
Thank you, Dr. Meredith. That was great and very inspirational. I have a few questions, if you don't mind. The first is, I'd be interested in how you first became active in the college.
I got active through my state chapter. I was doing a trauma fellowship with Don Trunke on the West Coast, and I came back here with the charge of building a trauma center. He told me I should join. The guy that was the chair of the committee on trauma for the state of North Carolina, I called him, and he said, well, we're having a state chapter meeting. I came back July 1. We had a state chapter meeting July 11th. I went to that meeting. I told him some of the stuff Don Trunke told me, and they said, you know what, you need to be the chair of the committee on trauma next year. And so the next year I had a whole bunch of work to do, and so I did all of that. And then I got involved in state stuff and built a state trauma registry, and built the state committee on trauma into being pretty active in that, and then developed a state trauma system, and really was the leader of that for 15 years. And as a part of that, someone discovered me and asked me to be on the verification committee of the college or do site visits for the college. And then I got on the verification committee. And because of starting the state registry, they asked me to work on the NTDB committee, or I asked somebody to put me on it. I don't remember. And so I worked on the NTDB committee, and next thing I knew, I was on the committee on trauma, and then chairing the committee on trauma, and then director, and then all along the way, it just happened, right? It just happened. You know, I now sit in rooms with people that I didn't believe I'd ever get to meet when I was young, right? And I remember going with my wife to my first AAST meeting and asking. She reminded me of this last night while we were watching the convocation. She said, "Remember we went to that, and you were saying you think I could ever get in this organization?" And I remember it clearly, thinking there's no way I'm ever going to be able to be in the AAST. Then obviously I've been president of the AAST and lots of other stuff, but that's how I got engaged in stuff with the college. It's amazing.
It seems pretty organic through the state chapters. Probably a route that has been successful for many.
That is a very good route to be aware of what's going on in the college and all of those things. And it is, they're pretty vibrant. Many state chapters are pretty vibrant. I haven't missed one I missed one for a funeral since I've come back to the state of North Carolina in 1987. I've missed one. And I've been on the board since probably early 90s. And I love it. My children, so my son's birthday is July 11th, and that's almost always the weekend of our state chapter meeting. And about 5 years ago, he's long out of the house. He's gotten a PhD and working in cyber forensics now, but for his birthday about 5 years ago, what he wanted was for us to bring him to the state chapter meeting with his girlfriend, because he'd done that every year, almost his entire life, till he was 30 years old. And he had friends there that he hadn't seen in 4 or 5 years because he was getting a PhD and he couldn't go and all that stuff. So we took him and his girlfriend to the state chapter meeting, and he loved it. He loved it. It's I feel that way. I get to see friends that I don't get to see any other time of the year, and they're really great friendships. They're really great friendships. If you're in academics, you get to see people that are in practice, and you get to learn what's going on in the world of surgery. And if you're in practice, you get to see academics, and you get to learn what's going on in the academic side of surgery. And you get to see these young, cool residents come in and give papers and go ask them if they want a job. And you can sort through who's any good and who's not any good. And you can, talk to the department chairs and say, I'm looking for somebody who's really good at this. And they can say, I got somebody. There's a lot of business that goes on at the state chapter meetings that are good for careers and good for practices. And a lot goes on there. It's a lot very cool.
Well, Dr. Meredith, I know we missed you.
Our academic performance to be able to proceed up through it. I mean, Beth Sutton, our chair of the Board of Regents this year, is a practicing surgeon in Texas, right? Tyler Hughes is a practicing surgeon in Kansas. They've not made their way up the College of Surgeons by being presidents of societies and writing papers and stuff. They did it by contributing to surgery in America. I'm sorry, Cindy, go ahead.
I was going to say, we definitely missed seeing you at the South Carolina, North Carolina chapter. I know you're going to be one of our special speakers. And I'll always remember the on time and in color. So thanks for that. I was hoping you could clarify when you were discussing avoidance of insatiable desires. I think I heard you say that women have more ambition. And I want you to clarify, because I think we have books that tell us to sit at the table and find our voice. And do you think they've gone overboard? Maybe we need to live more in the moment.
I didn't say it the way I meant to say it, if you heard it that way.
Good.
I think women are afraid to show their ambition because there's societal norms that shut you down from doing that. They think you're being the B word, or they think you're too pushy, and it's a really hard balance to reach. And I think too many women think that ambition is a bad thing, or they get trained to think it might be a bad thing. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. I think I look for everybody I hire, and I look for women who have ambition. I want people who have ambition around me. And I think you should I think you should nurture your ambition and you should embrace it, and then learn to deal with the crap that society makes of that, but don't let it squelch your ambition. That's what I'm trying to say.
So I had another question that your talk raised, Dr. Meredith, and one was the ACS obviously has a lot of resources for surgeons that are younger, earlier in their practices. Is there any particular resource you think is underutilized or particularly valuable that the college has?
I will tell you right now, today, the resource that people do not know about is the wellness resource. If you go to the website, you can find a whole section in COVID, and a whole section in that is wellness. And it talks about how to take care of yourself, and not just how to take care of yourself in terms of how to wear PPE and do those things, but how to take care of yourselves by making sure you take some time to take a deep breath and talk to people about the stresses that it represents and some of those things. And I really think it's important to do that right now for everybody in the country, but all of us too. I really do. We are going to be, we just formed this task force on racism, and the Board of Regents accepted our report, and they're getting ready to go to work on it. My last ask was that we not wait till the February Board of Regents meeting to start to work on it. So we'll be appointing committee and doing some stuff. And I think we're going to have tools for any fellow in the college, for any state chapter, for any practice, for any department of surgery to start working on implicit bias, bystander training, allyship, a lot of things that are really, really important for us to change the way surgery works. And I think they're not quite there. There's lots of resources there now, but it's not the robust turnkey system that we need to have. But I think there's going to be a lot more resources for people of color and women, other minorities to get into the college and work their way through. I think we'll have a lot more pipeline development, mentorship programs. I think you'll find a lot more of those. But today I would say that the place to go to get involved is that, and quality. It's one of our major points of emphasis. It's a thing that's not taught enough in residency. The college is ahead of most residencies in how to work on quality and that. And another thing is get involved in your state chapter and go to the leadership summit. I've learned so much about leadership from being involved in the leadership summit, and you can get into that pretty easily. You can meet people and network and start moving yourself up in the College of Surgeons, not just the state chapter. Though I think the state chapter is great. I think you have to be involved in that. It's too valuable to not get involved in that.
Dr. Meredith, one question that came from one of the attendees what had to do with fellows who are not practicing in the United States or the international fellows within the college. How can they get more involved in the college if they're practicing outside of the United States? And I was really struck by the number of individuals who became fellows last night who were not practicing in the United States. So how is the college particularly addressing their needs?
We do have chapters in lots of different countries, and those state chapters work, and they have lots of connection and lots of support from the College Central. An awful lot of our international outreach goes through ATLS and the Committee on Trauma. A lot of our outreach goes there. It's very badly needed in those places. And then a lot of folks get with the college through Operation Giving Back to develop programs to go into nations that are really third world countries and struggling to get resources or training or partnerships and some of those things. There are a lot of ways, but the best way is through participating in the meetings here and ATLS and state chapters in your local country.
Well, Dr. Meredith, thank you very much for making the time to attend the annual meeting. This is really, for us as younger fellows, really a testament to the real dedication and interest that the college has to our opinions and to make sure that we're involved in all aspects of the college. So I really do appreciate the time that you've taken to spend with us at the meeting.
Well, thank you. I hope it's been worthwhile. I see Nick there. Nick, it's good to see you. He's been presenting to the board for a while. You can show these guys how easy it is to get involved, right?
Yes,
Suit
sir.
up, show up on time and in color, and you got it done.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right. Thank you all so much. Thank you for getting involved in the Young Fellows Association. It's a great group, and you're going to enjoy participating in it, and you'll find your niche. You really will. There's something there for everybody. I appreciate it.